Okay. Okie dokie. All right. Oh, let me just take care of a couple more bits and bobs. And there we are. Hello. Good evening. Good morning. Good afternoon. Whatever it may happen to be where you are, my wild darlings. My reading room angels. Good to see you all. This is Tad. I will be here till about another hour from now. And I am going to be reading, and what I'm reading tonight, I am for a variety of reasons, which I won't bore you with, but I'm going to be starting the last of the three Bobby Dollar books. In part because of Christmas time, in part because the last one I ended up with was the second Bobby Dollar book. And as I said when I was posting the announcement of this reading, also because they're entertaining to read, which is always makes it easier on this end. So I don't have to do quite so many voices and don't have to do quite so many exotic voices, although obviously when you're dealing with angels and devils, there is a certain soupçon of exoticism involved. But that is not important. Trust me when I say this. They're easier to read. They were easier to write also, which was one of the other things that makes the Bobby Dollar books a fond memory for me. And I would love to write another one someday. We'll see. What I am going to work on is getting around to eventually writing that second Bobby Dollar Christmas story, which the title of the first one was God Rest Ye Merry Gentle Pig. And as I recall, the title of the second one was Two Partridges in One Pear Tree. But I have to write it. So there you go. What else to relate? We are having a nice week except for the torrential rains, which we had at the beginning of the week, which kept the dogs inside for several days, and they would only creep out to pee for a few seconds and then run back in and shake off all the water, or if I was lucky enough to get to them quickly, I would get them toweled off. Other than that, they're doing well. Lemon is apparently a fairly typical in the general. She's an American bully. She's a Staffordshire Terrier, but she's in the general pit bull mode. And all of the, I get a lot of pit bull stuff nowadays because of having a pit bull. And one of the common themes seems to be that they are very attached to their owners, and that is certainly true. Lemon is wherever Deb is, first of all, and then secondarily, if Deb is not around, then she will fasten on to me or whatever other human is around, although she's fond of me, mostly because I'm large and warm and I like dogs. And Johnny's doing a better job. He's doing a better job. He's kind of come to terms with the inevitability of the Lemon era. And as a result, he's, while not exactly overjoyed, he's certainly treating her more like, okay, you live here. I guess I can't do anything about it now. It's too late for a class action suit. So, welcome to the club. He's not thrilled about it, but, he's okay. So the dogs are doing all right. We're still in the last thrashing era of the holiday season, the 25-26 holiday season. We have two birthdays this month, and we're having both of them over for dinner, and sort of a two birds, one stone, or two partridges, one pear tree situation. We are, I'm working hard on the final edit, well, not the final edit, but the final draft of the Splintered Sun, and then that will go to my copy editor, and then it will come back to me with copy editing. And fortunately for me, I have a very smart copy editor, and I almost always agree with the things she flags, or if I don't, then I have to make it clear why she didn't understand what was going on in a given section. So I still will have to oftentimes make a change. But that's mostly what I'm working on and recuperating from the holidays. Deb, of course, is doing all her own work. Every day, mysterious parcels arrive, squishy parcels full of wool, full of yarn. And I'm constantly being sent down to the to the mailbox to check to see if more yarn has arrived. Not that she's trying to corner the world yarn market or anything, or is in a hurry to do so, but more because we've had a couple of when the delivery people fail to put things where they're supposed to go, we've had things left out on top of our mailboxes, which are, down the street from where we are. And it's one group of mailboxes, and then they have been stolen. Yarn thieves have struck. So now we are checking virtually every day because the stream of incoming yarn seems to be virtually never ending. So that's what my days have been about recently: working, editing, cleaning the house for various social functions, and refereeing dogs, taking care of cats as well, and again, editing The Splintered Sun when I can, and acting in my crucial role as the baton-wielding part of the house to mailbox relay race to fetch yarn back up. So that's my news. I wish I could hear yours, but then we'd probably be here all night and I'd have a completely different setup than I have, which I would have to figure out. And God knows it's taken me long enough to figure out how to use all of this particular raft of different software platforms which are tied together to do these broadcasts. So I'm making it sound more complicated than it really is. I'm sure that a 9-year-old, an intelligent 9-year-old could figure out how to do it. But I am long past the point of having the technological acumen of an intelligent 9-year-old. Because intelligent 9-year-olds all grew up with this crap even before they could read. So they never try to think their way through these things. They just push the right buttons and they happen. Anyway, so what else am I going to do? I am going to check in. Where is my other... There we go. Okay. Yes, that's better. I am going to check in and see who has popped their head round the door to say hello. And I see Wouter. Looks like Wouter had the first comment. Petra, hello. And Wouter, hello. Chenoa, good to see you. Chris Fab, as always, a huge pleasure. Nikki Chetwind is here. Ilva, my dear, good to see you too. Maria Jose is here. Mr. Mark Craigbaum, star of stage and screen, is here. Iris, hello. Dirk, hello. Good to see you too. Isaac, checking in from Utah. Hopefully you are not snowbound at the moment. Nicole is here. Mark Redman is checking in, presumably from Yorkshire, unless he is traveling on the road. Penny Davies and Christy Sanders have all commented at this point. I'm sure there are others, but they always make it difficult for me to see. I also just have never understood why it is that there even has this most relevant comments thing, because it's clearly some kind of machine decision. And I'd really love to know when people are writing to me, or commenting on something, how the machine thinks it possibly has the capacity to decide what is relevant and what is not relevant. And this has been going on since long before AI, so obviously it's an even more crude system of interpretation. Anyway, let's see who else we got here that I haven't said hello to. Epifanio, hello, checking in from Tokyo. Excellent, good to have you, and thank you for saying hello. And Suzanne, if I didn't say hello to Suzanne Owen, she has showed up as well and said hello and good morning. Tiny bit of snow, says Suzanne. Okay, so before I start, anything else I wanted to share with you folks? I'm thinking. I'm coming up with nothing. I've got nothing. I mean, I think that's it, basically. I mean, I'm a hermit. Deb and I did go out the other night to go to dinner, which was like a big deal. Not, in the sense of we had to prepare a lot for it, but we did have to make sure that we had our daughter around to dog sit, because we still don't feel comfortable leaving them alone together in the house for any length of time. I mean, yeah, we'll go outside for a few minutes or something and they're fine. But we don't know what would happen, because our tradition is to lock the dogs, shut the dogs up in one room of the house while we're out. Especially Lemon, who is a chewing monstrosity and she'll never catch up with Frankie, our late Chihuahua. Frankie cost us, and I'm not talking about vet bills and all that stuff that came later, but just even before that, right off the bat, Frankie cost us 20 grand. That's not what we paid for him either, although we paid way too much for him back when Deb still thought it was a good idea to get breed dogs instead of picking up dogs at the pound, which is much better for a variety of reasons. But anyway, no, Frankie the Chihuahua was a very funny, personable little dog. To the extent that Deb wrote on Twitter when it was not yet a hive of scum and villainy, Deb used to write a series of pieces in Frankie's voice, kind of describing what she thought his view of the world would be and his descriptions of his daily activities, which was lovely and very funny. But there's a reason why she started writing about him, and he was a very characterful dog. But one of the things he did is he was literally a piss artist. He would pee in the most disturbingly difficult to find places or do it right in front of you. I mean, he didn't care. He was absolutely... Chihuahuas are notoriously bad that way, which is one of the many reasons I was not the one who wanted a Chihuahua. But anyway, so when we sold our last house before moving here, it had beautiful wood floors. And when we started moving furniture to stage the house, where we were moving these like old wooden chests and things that we had, we discovered that Frankie had peed under all of them. And they had literally, it's acid. It's uric acid. It's like fire, it destroys things like wood. To the tune of it, we had to carve about $20,000 off the asking price for the house, simply because of Chihuahua piss. So, and yet I never killed him. Not once. But anyway, so he was a very entertaining dog. And Lemon is better than that. That's not her problem. But her problem is chewing. Getting things, tearing them to pieces. We had a thing where she found that she could pull stuff off the Christmas tree, of course. So every time we were out of the room, we would come back and there would be Lemon with, a long length of plastic ivy leaves or, something else. Fortunately, most of the things that were like actually glass or anything were too high up for her to reach. But, she destroyed like half the things that were on that tree. So back to the original comment, we do not feel comfortable yet leaving the dogs alone in the house. So we actually got out of the house and went to dinner, had a very nice time. Last time Deb and I went out for dinner was her birthday, and I was miserably sick and tried to bravely not show it. But it was like stomach flu or gastroenteritis or one of those things. And without going into details, I just felt wretched and wound up eating nothing but a bowl of carrot soup because I didn't want to spoil the birthday. Anyway, but Deb had a good time, and that's what mattered because it was her birthday. So, all right. Now I've done everything, said hello to people, checked to make sure that my broadcast hasn't suddenly frozen partway through, as happened a couple of weeks back. And yes. Oh, and there's somebody else who showed up. Ian Williams. Hello, Ian. Good to have you. Anyway, so I am now going to start reading, assuming that I have opened this up. Yes, I have. So, now reading from the third and last of the Bobby Dollar books, at least so far. This is Sleeping Late on Judgment Day. Prologue. Oh, one last thing. I was going to give you guys a précis, because not everybody heard all of the last book by any means, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that because I was thinking of these sort of as three separate books instead of one story, that I put a lot of information in the first parts of the story to catch you up on where things were. So I'm not going to bother to lead in with anything much more than that. Those of you who might be new and don't know the story, Bobby is an angel. His real name is Deloriel. He's a heavenly advocate for the souls of the newly dead, and he has been pulled into a big, huge mystery and fallen in love with a demon, and it took him to hell, and he just recently got back. So that's basically what's going on. But he's in the middle of an extremely uncomfortable situation where he does not know who to trust, including the people, the other angels, on his own side. So anyway, that's where we are. Prologue. I hadn't attended a trial in heaven before, not in person. They don't happen that often, for one thing. But wait, O wise angel, I hear you say, how can there be trials in heaven? Which is a perfectly good question, because once you've made it to the big happy, you should be golden, right? You've been judged righteous, or you wouldn't get in. And after that, you're doing the work of the highest. So how could you go wrong? Well, first of all, there's the whole free will thing. People and angels have to be free to make mistakes, or else we live in a clockwork universe where everything's predetermined and perfect. Most of the time, heaven does seem like that, a flock of serene, shiny creatures living in complete harmony, a hive of buzzing happiness and shared purpose. But we all know that in nature, no matter how well any system works, there's always a couple of dumbass birds heading north for the winter when everyone else is flying south, or one dipshit salmon belly surfing down the rapids, yelling, "Woo, yeah, check me out," as he smacks face first into the more sensible fish swimming upstream to spawn. The fact that these unrepresentative idiots freeze and plummet from the sky or die without issue isn't the point. The point is free will. And apparently we angels are capable of poor impulse control just like everybody else. Thus, there are trials in heaven, and I was about to attend my first. Although attend is a bit misleading, I admit, it wasn't really my first because I'd been aware of several other trials. Here in the happy place, you can know about important things like that and even follow them closely without actually being present. Although it's hard to explain because, it's another heaven thing. Imagine sitting in a crowded bar when the playoffs are on and a local team is involved. You don't have to stay glued to the screen to know what's going on in the game. You can pick up what's happening in a dozen different ways, and that's how I'd done my trial watching in the past. But this trial was going to be different, and so I had secured myself an excellent seat, front row center. The poor bastard angel on trial was going to face the full weight of heaven's judgment, and the entire shining city was full of anticipation. The hall of justice sparkled and throbbed with the light of watching angels, angels who wanted more than just a general feeling about this trial, who wanted to experience it up close and personal. I thought I even saw my boss, Archangel Temuel, who us angelic grunts usually called the Mule, not too far away. The crowd of the saved, jostling each other in the massive shining hall despite being only semi-tangible, another heaven thing which doesn't really translate, began to murmur with anticipation as the jury appeared, a row of blooming angelic flames that represented the great and the good. In fact, some of the very greatest and goodest that our third sphere had to offer. I recognize them all. "We are convened in the sight of the highest to do justice." These words came from the diamond-faceted white light that represented Terentia, a powerful angel who was acting as master of ceremonies. The other four heavenly judges, Cariel, Raziel, Anaita, and Chamuel, watched silently from beside her, their flames lined up like a menorah on Hanukkah Day 5. "God loves you all," Terentia added, then turned her attention to me. "Angel Advocate Delorio, you are accused of conspiring against heaven's laws. In addition to several crimes, you are also charged with the sins of wrath, pride, envy, and avarice, all most dreadful. If you are found guilty, you will be cast from heaven and into the unholy pit, there to dwell in suffering for eternity. Do you have any questions before we begin?" So, yeah, the reason I had such a good seat was because I was the one on trial. And if you've got questions, Believe me, so did I. Probably the same ones, in fact, beginning with, how did I get here? And how do I get out of here again? But for reasons I'll explain as I go, I didn't think it would do me any good to ask. Look, you've already decided what you're going to do, I said, with what I hoped came off as a tough, cold-blooded calm I sure didn't feel. Let's cut to the chase, because we all know the fun part is going to be the sentencing. But wait, I hear you say, how did you wind up on trial in heaven, Bobby Dollar? How could such a thing happen to you, one of heaven's most beloved and respected angels? Oh, yeah, that's hilarious. Kick a guy when he's on trial for his immortal soul just to get a cheap laugh, why don't you? You really want to hear how I wound up here? I guess it started with a dream I had. Chapter 1. Just an Angel. The wood was stacked higher than the heads of the cat-calling spectators. On top of the mountainous pyre, the prisoner sagged against the stake like something unreal, a discarded shop window dummy or a forgotten toy. The condemned wore a soldier's gleaming armor, but the slightness of the figure told a different story. This was a woman about to be burned. This was St. Joan. Cats are busy tonight. She lifted her head and looked out across the crowded town square. Our eyes met. I saw the pale white gold hair, the eyes red as blood, and my heart went cold. This wasn't the Maid of Orleans. It was Kaz. My Kaz, my beautiful demon woman, the creature who had both captured and endangered my soul. Someone set fire to the stacked wood. The kindling caught first, freeing wisps of white smoke that quickly rose and spread around her feet. Within moments, the flames began to climb the sides of the pyre, painting the rising smoke with sunset tones. Kaz struggled against her bonds, more and more desperate as the fire rose. I couldn't move. I opened my mouth and tried to call her, but I couldn't speak either. I was frozen, helpless. When she needed me most, I couldn't do a thing. I can't reach you, she cried, coils of smoke climbing her writhing body like snakes. Oh, Bobby, I can't reach you. Then her words turned to shrieks. Flames leaped high into the air until I could hardly make her out through the shimmer of heat. Her struggling figure, the smoke, the buildings in the background all bent and wavered as if underwater. Then, through the rising, spreading cloud, I saw a clutter in the air above her, winged shapes dropping from the sky. Hallelujah! The bells of the town began to clang, ringing out the song of redemption. Hallelujah! The winged ones swept down through the smoke. Angels! Angels coming to save her! But then I saw the shapes more clearly. Maybe it was the warping of the heated air, but these supposed rescuers looked grim and terrible. Eyes lightning bright, wings black as burnt paper, and glowing at the edges as though fire were their natural element. Angels? I wondered. Or demons? Coming to save her or drag her back to endless torment? Paralyzed, silent, I could only watch as the bells grew louder. Louder. Hallelujah! 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 I lurched upright, my blanket tangled around me. The room was dark except for a little bit of street light creeping in between the cheap curtains. No flames, no smoke, but my phone kept beeping out that horrible joke melody over and over. Hallelujah! My phone. It was just my phone. Yeah, I thought through the pounding of my heart and the slow gathering of my confused thoughts. Fuck you, Handel, and your fucking chorus, too. And fuck whoever in heaven decided to use it as our ringtone. After knocking half the crap off my nightstand, I found the phone and then the talk button. The Hosanna-ing finally stopped. What? My pulse was banging like I had stumbled off a cliff into empty air. This better be good or someone's gonna die. Someone already did. It was Alice from the downtown office, our local branch of Heavens Management. You've got a client, Dala. She gave me the details like she was reading a shopping list. Go get him, cowboy. And maybe you wouldn't be such a grumpy piece of shit if you didn't drink yourself to sleep. She hung up before any witty replies occurred to me. I can't reach you, Kaz had cried in my dream. And I couldn't reach her either, because we were separated by much more than distance. One of us was in hell. The other one only felt that way. As I lay there waiting for the morning's first flood of black hopelessness to pass, I heard a scuffling noise on the other side of the wall near my head. I'd noticed it earlier when I was going to bed and had put it down to rats or possibly one of the neighbors in the adjoining apartment scraping something off the wall. This time it went on for a while, a repetitive screech, screech, screech that quickly got on my nerves. Finally, I thumped the wall with my fist and everything went silent. I wasn't crazy about my new digs in the downmarket Tierra Green apartments, but things and people that wanted to hurt me kept finding out where I lived, so lately I hadn't been able to stay in any one place for long, and I hate moving. Between my girlfriend on fire nightmare and the noise in the walls, it took me a good minute or two dunking my head in a sink full of cold water before I could calm down enough to get my mind to focus on work. Angel advocate, I reminded myself. Somebody needs you. The client was only a short distance away, out on the Bayshore Freeway, but even after I got out of the apartment, I couldn't find my car for about 10 minutes. Not, I hasten to say, because I had come home drunk, although I might have been a tiny bit fuzzy around the edges, but because after recent experiences with a murderous semi-zombie named Smiler, I'd started leaving my ride in a different place every night. I felt like I'd only managed about 10 minutes sleep, but it was almost dawn, which meant I'd slept a decent amount. I'd passed out almost directly after getting home. Again, not because I'd been drinking, although I'd probably had a few beers with dinner. I've been trying to cut back lately, in fact, to be a little more responsible. No, I was falling asleep at odd hours and forgetting where my car was because I'd been sleeping so badly. And I was sleeping badly because I kept dreaming about hell. See, I'd just spent what felt like half a year there, and it was exactly as bad as you'd imagine. No, worse. It's not something you just get over in a night. Not to mention the fact that the whole reason I'd gone there had been to free the demon woman I loved, Casimira, the Countess of Cold Hands. And I'd failed. Badly. Thus, your pal Bobby's apparently permanent sense of insufficiency and ugly dreams nearly every night. This had been a new one, though, and worse than usual. Usually I just dreamed of Marmora, the fake Kaz that the archdemon Eligor had used to sucker me like the smallest small-timer you can imagine, and how she had transformed from Kaz into liquid nothing in my arms. Sometimes I also dreamed of the horrible things I'd seen happen to Kaz while I was being tortured by Eligor, her boss and ex-lover, although I was convinced most of those things hadn't actually happened to her. I really needed to believe that. So, what had been different about this dream? Kaz told me once that when she herself was being executed, she had thought of Joan of Arc. So it only made sense my subconscious would add that nasty wrinkle to the regular pattern of nightmares. But there had been something different this time, something deeper that I couldn't grasp, almost as though she had truly been trying to communicate with me. But how, why, or about what, I had no clue. I found my boxy old Datsun at last down an alley off Heller Street that I only barely remembered choosing. It was late November, but dry and clear, so traffic wasn't too bad, even this close to downtown. It took me less than a quarter of an hour to reach the accident scene, just a little way south of the Woodside Expressway cloverleaf. Some kind of minivan with writing on its side lay upside down and badly damaged at the end of a trail of wreckage. Black and whites and emergency vehicles had parked all over the shoulder, lights whipping blue and red. The only body was on the ground, covered with a bloody sheet, and nobody looked like they were in much of a hurry. Angel time. I left my car on the shoulder about 100 feet past the accident and walked back through the ice plants. None of the cops gave me a second look as I approached, but that's pretty much how it is. When angels are working, especially at a death scene, we just don't get noticed. Of course, the cops and paramedics were going to see even less of me in a second. When I was within a few yards of the body, I stopped and opened the portal of bright but unsteady light we angels call a zipper. Yes, that's what we call them. Spare me the crude jokes because, believe me, I've heard them all, mostly from other angels. The zippers are just an opening we go through to do our work. They're holes in time, and everything on the other side of them is kind of a bubble made out of that single moment. The sounds of the freeway died as I stepped through. On the other side, the emergency vehicles and the passing cars and even the people had all frozen into place as if 1 billion gallons of clear plastic had been poured over everything. Cops halted in mid-gesture, lights frozen at different stages of illumination, an entire universe gone silent as a tomb. Other than me, the only thing moving was a guy in work clothes, walking in and out among the motionless cars, pounding on windows, trying to get one of the drivers to notice him. They wouldn't, of course, because he was outside of time, and they were all still inside it. He saw me coming and ran toward me. He had a thick mustache and dark skin, but all I could really focus on were the terrified whites of his eyes. "Help me!" he shouted. "I have had an accident!" "Gurdeep Malhotra," I said. "God loves you." "Who are you?" he asked, stumbling to a stop. "I'm Deloriel, your angelic advocate." I gave him a moment for that to sink in. "I'm afraid you didn't survive your accident." He stared. If blood had still been flowing in his veins, I'd have said he went pale. As it was, he seemed to lose resolution for a moment as the shock washed through him. But I can't. My son, it's his..." He shook his head slowly. "My wife. Will I never see her again?" "There's a lot I can't tell you," I said as kindly as I could. "In fact, there's a whole lot I don't know myself. But first, we have to prepare you for judgment. That's my job. I will do everything I can to defend you. I know you were a good man." I didn't really know that yet, but it never hurts to calm a client down so you can work with them. He was still staring at me. "But you are an angel. How can this be? I am not a Christian." "That's okay, Mr. Malhotra. I'm not a Christian angel. I'm just an angel." The judgment didn't go as fast as I would have liked. The prosecuting demon was a little upstart named Rat Piddle, the sort who thinks he's going to win every case with some amazing Perry Mason move. He dragged out every transgression the poor dead guy had ever made. A reckless driving where the officer hadn't even ticketed him, and tried to create a picture of a life of unconcern for others, despite the fact that this morning Gurdeep had only been hurrying because he wanted to wrap his son's birthday presents before the kid got up for school. That got to me, and I'm afraid I referred to the prosecutor as scum scraped from the restroom floors of hell, which, although reasonably accurate, was not strictly collegial. Anyway, luckily for me and Mr. Malhotra, The judge was a stolid ball of radiance named Sashimiel, whom I'd argued in front of dozens of times. She wasn't prone to getting excited because some prosecutor was trying to make a reputation. After a decent interval, she simply cut Rat Piddle off in the middle of some new detour and declared judgment in favor of my client. Whoosh! Gurdeep Malhotra was off to whatever happens next. Despite the fact that the same thing must have happened to me, too, I don't remember any of it, so I'm afraid I can't fill in the blanks. The judge poofed back to wherever powers and principalities go between judgments. Rat Piddle disappeared in a smoking snit, and I was free to get on with my day. Chapter 2. Old Friends, New Fiends. When I got back to the so-called real world from the timelessness of outside, it was a bit before 9 in the morning. See, just because we step outside, it doesn't mean time actually stops. I think it's something to do with us earthbound angels wearing mortal bodies. As soon as we step back through the zipper, we catch up with the difference between outside and the real world. In this case, a couple of hours or so. I'm not really a morning guy, but the thought of crawling back into bed to dream about Kaz again depressed me. So I headed across the waterfront to Oyster Bill's, a bar that serves food. Sort of. I have a soft spot for the place, and I've been going there as long as I can remember, which I suppose proves I have more loyalty than sense. In fact, if I weren't already dead, that could be my epitaph. I was polishing off the last of the starch and grease melange Bill mischievously refers to as breakfast, when an old rummy wandered in from the street and started making his way down the counter, discreetly panhandling, because Bill doesn't like begging in his bar. He thinks it lowers the tone of the joint, which is about the cutest thing I've ever heard. Most of the other customers didn't talk to the guy or even acknowledge him, waiting until he got the point and walked away. But when he reached me, I fished in my pocket for some loose bills. The old fellow had roomy eyes and hair that stood up like it had been fashion moosed back in the 80s and never touched since. He also smelled like he'd been drinking something you aren't supposed to drink. Aqua Velva, perhaps, strained through an old shirt. I put the money in his hand and said, "Good luck. God loves you." I didn't say it very loudly because being polite in Oyster Bill's is a bit like visibly limping past a pride of hungry lions. But he seemed to hear. He smiled toothlessly and patted my shoulder. "Thank you, friend," he said, slurring less than I would have expected. "I'd like to give you something for your kindness." "No, really, you don't need to." He reached into his pants pocket and pulled out a creased, once white sheet of paper that had been folded like a letter. He handed it to me like it was worth something, which was another kind of sad. "Promise you'll read it. Promise you'll think about it. God knows you and wants you for his great plan." Then he shuffled off and out onto the esplanade. Okay, yes, it was a tiny bit ironic for a wino to be assuring an angel that he's wanted for God's great plan. I glanced at the piece of paper, but it seemed to be more political than religious. The headline was something about, "Someone in the White House wants you destroyed." I almost left it on the counter, but for all I knew, the old duffer was watching me through the window from outside, thrilled somebody had actually accepted one of his crumpled handbills, so I stuck it in my pocket before I headed out. I still didn't want to go home, but 10 in the morning was way too early to go over to the Compasses and get blotto in the company of sympathetic co-workers, so I decided I'd try my buddy and co-angel, Sam, who I hadn't heard from in the last couple of days. Sam had inadvertently got me into most of the shit I was currently wading through, so it speaks volumes that I still considered him my bestie. I hate walking and talking on the phone almost as much as I hate people who walk and talk on the phone. So when I saw an empty bus bench on Parade Street, usually full of brown-bagging office workers, tourists, or those ubiquitous, slightly ratty-looking downtown young people whose dogs always wear bandanas, I grabbed it and got out my phone. In the process, the Rummies screed, which really sounds like a horror movie now that I think about it. The Rummies screed. Return of the Rummies screed. Curse of... Okay, you get it. Fell out of my pocket. So as I listened to Sam's phone ringing on the other end, I looked it over again. There wasn't actually a whole lot on it. At the top, in big, blocky, handwritten letters, it said, "Someone in the White House wants to destroy you," with a picture of the building in question floating in the clouds. Then it said, "You have enemies. Don't you want to know about them? They know about you." Beneath that was the mandatory Bible quote found in so much of your finest crazy person literature. Ecclesiastes 9:12. "For man also knoweth not his time. As the fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare, so are the sons of men snared in an evil time, when it falleth suddenly upon them." Down at the bottom, a group of slightly odd things had been cut out of magazines and taped to the original before it was photocopied. The first two were a picture of an angel and another of a donkey. The angel bit was an interesting coincidence. I glanced at the donkey, wondering if that was meant to indicate the Democrats, the current White House occupants. Sam's phone kept ringing. At last I hung up, but something else was bothering me now. Then it hit me. Donkey. Mule. Archangel Temuel, my supervisor. Two more pictures were at the bottom of the handbill. A clock out of a child's picture book and a cartoon of a garden bench. That seemed another long coincidence since I'd met the Archangel on a bench in Beager Square a few times in the past. And if it wasn't a coincidence, I was being ordered to a meeting. I trotted over to the square, but saw no sign of the fragrant old man on any of the benches. Could it really have been Temuel? Our Archangel liked disguises, especially when he was being secretive, and it was entirely possible he knew that everyone in my department called him the Mule. Also, White House wasn't that different from the Big House and other things we angelic grunts called heaven. But did I need a message to tell me people in heaven were out to get me? Shit, I knew that already. Temuel knew that I knew that already. So either it was what I'd thought in the first place, a slightly coincidental piece of mail from farthest crazy land, or my boss had come all the way to Earth to meet me so he could warn me I was in even deeper trouble than I thought I was, and I'd missed the meeting. I looked at the paper again, and this time I noticed that the hands on the clock were pointing to 11. I checked the time on my phone. 9:40. No wonder there was no sign of Temuel. I still had almost an hour and a half to wait. So apparently I was going to the compasses after all, because I sure as hell wasn't going to sit in windy Beager Square for all that time. Besides, I wasn't going there to drink, just to kill time until I could find out if this was a real communication. So it didn't really count. How often have you held a piece of paper in your hand and prayed that it belonged to a real drunk smelling of real rank sweat and old aftershave, instead of being a message from an archangel? First time for me. Come back, there you are. When I got to the compasses, the place was all but empty. Just a couple of angels I didn't know too well, French Didi and another guy, sitting in one of the booths emptying a bottle of wine between them like it was 10 in the evening instead of 10 in the morning. They only looked up long enough to nod, then went back to arguing about Formula One racing. Like I said, I didn't know them, and Formula One isn't really my thing, so I almost walked out again. I bellied up to the bar instead and asked bartender Chico to slide me a beer. Yes, I know, I said I was cutting back. See, vodka, that's drinking. Beer, well, beer is just getting the inside of your mouth wet. Anyway, as Chico pushed the bottle of Negra Modelo over to me, he said, "Looks like all you special cases are coming home to roost today." "Who else beside me?" What am I, your secretary? Go look in the back room. I figured it must be Sam, who had already made one dangerous and, as far as I could tell, completely pointless return to the bar, where he'd been treated like a returning war hero by the rest of the whole sick choir. But what he was doing in here at this hour was beyond me. The idea made me very nervous, and it wasn't because it was so early. Because of his known involvement in the third way, Sam was seriously angelica non grata with our bosses in heaven. The back room at the Compasses is actually a little alcove on the way to the restrooms, what the Brits call a snug. I pushed aside the curtain and found Walter Sanders, huddled over a mug of beer. Yes, that Walter Sanders, the angel who had been stabbed by a crazy dead guy who I'd assumed was trying to stab me just when Walter was about to tell me something important. I now felt pretty sure Walter himself had been the target to shut him up. Then he had disappeared completely. The last time I'd seen Walter, he'd been in hell, wearing a demon body, working on a slave ship. The last thing he'd done had been to point a finger at Anaita, one of my most powerful angelic superiors, as the person behind the third way, heaven's currently most wanted rebels, and much of the rest of my recent troubles. And hell was where I'd left Walter Sanders, too, which meant I was more than a wee bit surprised to see him sitting there in an overcoat, nursing a drink like any other Compasses regular. Walter! I threw myself onto the bench across from him. What the hell, pardon the expression, are you doing here? His first response had been a flinch, but when he saw it was me, he smiled. It was a tired sort of smile. Hey, Bobby. Good to see you. I'm back. Fuck yeah, I noticed. But how? When? What happened? Still not quite sure. Last I remember, you and I were walking down the street, then nothing. When I got rebodied, I found out I'd been gone for weeks. Pretty strange, a little hard to get up to speed again. He laughed unconvincingly and sipped his beer. But it's nice to see a familiar face. All the questions about to pour out of me suddenly clogged my brain like a dammed up stream. It took me a couple of seconds to work through what he'd just said. Hang on. You don't remember anything? Since you were stabbed? He shook his head. Not a thing. I hardly remember the night it happened either. I just remember you were there. I hope it wasn't too tough on you, Bobby. I know you tried to get me help. I could only sit, my beer untasted, and stare at him. What was going on? Had Walter been mind-wiped after being sprung from hell? Or was he just being cagey? Too smart to start blabbing in an angel bar about the kind of things that really happened. I took a deep breath, tried to keep my hands from shaking, and made appropriate small talk while we drank our beers, although I didn't want mine now at all. When I'd drunk about half, I put it down and announced that I had to go. I asked him if he was walking and if he wanted company, but Walter only shook his head again in that sort of dazed way. No, he said. No, I'll be honest, Bobby. It's my first day back, and this is about all the talking I can handle today. I saw a couple of the gang already earlier. I don't know, tired, really tired. I'm just going to finish this, then I'll call a cab. I was feeling a little desperate now. Oh, okay, but you're sure there isn't anything you want to talk to me about? Doesn't have to be tonight. Any time is fine, because you wanted to talk to me that night. You had something to tell me. He gave me a strange look. There is one thing, actually. Does this mean anything? He pulled out his wallet, fumbled for a moment, then produced a piece of folded paper. It was a leaf from an executive calendar, one of the note pages without a date, and it said, "Talk to D about A?" My pulse sped a bit. Is this your handwriting? Yeah, But it's from before the stabbing, and I don't remember what it's about. I just realized D might be you. Ring any bells? Could be. Damn straight. Talked to Dollar about Anaida asking questions. That was what it meant. Appreciate it, Walter. I'll give it some thought. Feel better. When I returned to the bar, Chico looked at the half bottle I put on the counter. Sick? A little, I said. Unsettled would have been a better word, because I knew that was all I was going to get from Walter Sanders. Whatever had made him want to talk to me on that fatal night was gone, burned out of him by the machineries of heaven. But thanks to the note Walter had made to himself before he was taken off the board, I wasn't going to waste any more time wondering whether I was right about that supreme bitch angel Anaita. From now on, as far as I was concerned, she absolutely was out to get me. Which still left me with the unpleasant fact that somebody much more powerful than me wanted me silenced, if not utterly obliterated. As I came out of the compasses, wishing I still smoked, something scuttled under a car at the edge of my sight. Normally I wouldn't have paid any attention, but Walter's return, or at least the return of part of Walter, just not the part I needed, had me more than a little on edge, so I looked carefully. After all, if knife-wielding Smiler had come back and decided I was Bobby Bad Angel again, I didn't want to be caught by surprise. From the split-second view I had before it vanished down a storm drain, whatever it was didn't look much bigger than a cat. But cats didn't run like that, legs splayed out, belly almost on the ground. If I hadn't known better, I might have said that what scurried silently back into the darkness behind a dumpster had, just for an instant, looked like a spider as big as a bicycle wheel. But that could have just been my eyes playing tricks on my twitchy, extremely stressed brain. Chapter 3, Angelic Aftershave. I could see the crusty old man all the way across Beaker Square. He had the bench to himself, which wasn't much of a surprise. You've got the smell down. I seated myself, but not too close. Any doubt I might still have had. Let me start that one again. I seated myself, but not too close. Any doubt I might still have had vanished at his shy smile. Good? I didn't overdo it. You sure didn't underdo it. I stretched my legs out. One useful thing, nobody was going to sit down here and interrupt us. The aromatic top notes of aftershave strained through a sock nestled atop a deeper tang of rancid sweat with just a fruity hint of human urine. I was just in the compasses. I saw Walter Sanders. Ah, said Temuel. Yeah, ah. What happened to him? He's back to work. Back to normal. Bullshit. That guy's been cored like an apple. Memories lifted right out. And it's because of me, as we both damn well know. Because he knew something about why this shit is happening to me. Something about Anaita, I wanted to say. That hell bitch everyone else calls an angel. But Temuel had made it very clear in the past that he didn't want to talk names. Last time I saw Walter, he was working on a slave ship in, well, let's just say a very unpleasant place. Did you spring him? No eye contact this time, as Temuel watched some pigeons fighting over a tortilla chip. Your information was acted on. Walter, Advocate Angel Vatriel, was returned to active duty. That's all I can tell you. Which was clearly a big yellow dead-end sign. Okay, let's try something else. If it's not about Walter, then why did you want to talk to me today? Why hand me your little mystery rebus? He gave me an irritated look. The cross-hatching of purplish veins on his cheeks and the bridge of his nose were as realistic as his odor. Because I can't talk to you in heaven. and I can't be seen talking to you anywhere else. But you need to know that things are bad, Bobby. Some important people upstairs are losing patience with you. It was still odd to hear him use my Earth name, though outside of heaven he hardly seemed to use anything else, which puzzled me. I still wasn't entirely comfortable with this my supervisor, my secret protector bit either, although without him I'd never have got to hell and had a chance to rescue Kaz. Not his fault that hadn't worked out, at least as far as I knew, but I still had too many unanswered questions about Temuel for my liking. What does that mean? How bad? Bad. It wasn't easy covering for your long absence, and it's not just the Epherate asking questions now. It's other higher-ups, too. You don't have any idea how hard it is to keep something from powers and principalities. I was getting tired of being made to feel guilty. So why do it? What do you mean? I mean, what's in it for you, Archangel? Why should you lift a finger to help me? Why risk your own soul? Because you like me? That seems strange, because nobody else does. I do like you, Bobby, I suppose. He gave me a grandfatherly look, or it would have been if the grandfather in question were a piss-soaked degenerate. But of course that's not all that's going on. Of course not. Cariel, Terentia, and Aita, they're all much, much more powerful than I am, and they're not even part of the High Host, his most important servants. They're just third sphere, like the rest of us, watching over Earth. There are powers above the powers, you know. He spread his blackened, crack-nailed fingers as if to illustrate the universe as a string game. My goodness, it goes up and up and up. Yeah, I get it. I don't want the higher-ups thinking about me so much. So what am I supposed to do about this unwanted attention? Get down on my knees and stay there? That wouldn't be such a bad idea, at least for the moment. He was stern again, an Old Testament prophet in a grimy pea-coat. Just try to keep a low profile for a while, will you? Don't ask for time off. Don't draw attention. And stop moving around, for goodness sake. You've had several apartments in the last year, not to mention your tour of various unsavory motels. I could have stayed in better ones if heaven paid us anything decent to live on. As you can guess, I wasn't the biggest team player, even before all this nutty third-way angels and demons clusterfuck got going. Look, I know you're trying to help me. I get that, and I'm grateful. But you know why I had to move all those times, right? You remember the various things that were trying with extreme prejudice to kill my ass? Yes, but that doesn't matter to heaven, because it doesn't happen to the other advocates. It's you, Bobby. You're a magnet for trouble, and even the powers that don't have anything against you are beginning to wonder why your name comes up so often. Yeah, I get it. Don't make waves. Don't do anything weird. But it's the weird that keeps coming after me. Disappointment this time. I was getting the full treatment. You know there's more to it than that. And he was right. Yes, crazy shit does keep happening to me, but a big part of it is because instead of minding my own business, I go over to Crazy Shit's house and say, hey, want to come out and play? But the stakes are too high for me just to quit, I said. You know why I went where I went. To that place. To hell, I meant. And why it didn't work out. Don't tell me anything. Temuel lifted his hands as if to cover his ears. He looked like that Munch scream painting. Just, please, whatever else you do, stay out of trouble. Stay visible to the folks upstairs. Stay in one place. and do your job, your real job. I'll help when I can." And then he abruptly got up and walked away across the square. You know your life is pretty screwed up when even the winos turn their backs on you. And that, end of chapter 3, is where we are stopping for the night. And at 7 p.m. later today, I will be reading starting in chapter 4, which is titled Too Hot. Anyway, there we is. And hang on, let me just, where did there it is. We have a bookmark. And with that, I assume we're still broadcasting. I hope we're still broadcasting. And yes, it sounds like it. That's good. Anyway, so lovely to see you all. Pleasure to have you back and be able to spend some time with you. I enjoy it very much, and I would like to keep doing it, which is why I started a whole book this time instead of just reading some more short stories. Anyway, so I will return at 7. Until then, take good care of yourselves. That's always the first step. You can't help anybody else if you can't help yourself first. But do keep an eye on your friends and loved ones, and keep an extra eye out for, that's only 2 eyes, so most of you should qualify. Keep an extra eye out for those around you who might need some help. As I've often said, even just a kind word, a hello, a couple of bucks to somebody who's down on their luck, whatever it is, that you can do. There's a big world out there full of need, and, we can kind of do our best to help when we can and when we see something. Anyway, with that, I say thank you again for joining me. Peace, be good, and I will talk to you real soon. Good night. Good morning.